Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to put new bearings in a cat accessory drive. This here goes between the fuel pump and the power steering pump on a 3406E or C15. Runs off of, via that gear, runs off of the timing gears in the front end of the engine and turns the accessories. Not sure if you can hear it on camera or not, but it's quite noisy. The bearings are loose, sloppy. So I ordered the new bearings, and there are two of them. They are just regular ball bearings. So there's some snap rings, and it looks like you have to pull them apart with a puller, and then I would imagine press them back on. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. Here's what they look like. There's the ones in here. Very noisy. So let's fix it. Before we do that, I want to show you where this part goes. So inside there is the timing gear, and that is the fuel pump that turns like that. And this piece goes, slides in there, bolts on, drives everything. And then your power steering pump bolts to the back of this. So it looks like this bearing comes off this way. These three bolts come out, and then I would imagine the bearing comes out this way. You slide that bearing off this shaft and then put it all back together. So to get this one off, you need something like this. Well, I can't believe that, but it's already pulling off. I didn't even hook the puller up to it yet. Well, that was easy. Huh. All right. So it's almost off. That will hit down on the shaft and not on the bearing, even though the bearings are bad anyway, but .7/16 on these. I assume they're probably Loctite. No, doesn't feel like Loctite. That was easy. That looks like just a snap ring. Take that ring off. Now I do not have the appropriate snap ring pliers. I have snap ring pliers, but there's no round holes there. So we're gonna make this work. Being a real bastard. All right, so I needed to go where I'm not working under that, but what I did was I squeezed out and then just pried up on the ring so that it is outside of the groove. And then you can just wiggle it up. Or you can buy the right tool. I just don't have one and never really needed it before, so. And there you go. Now this bearing, plate stays loose. This bearing needs to come off this way, and then we'll put 2 new bearings on. This isn't the ideal way to do it, but it'll work. So we have to get underneath this bearing, stick something in there so we're not damaging the shaft. Yeah, it looks like my socket will work. Then you're just pushing the shaft out of the bearing. Of course, make sure you're holding on to it. And there you have it. That is shot. That is also shot. Okay, we'll clean her up in the parts washer and be right back. Okay, here we go. Always, always, always. Brand new bearings. Spin them. Make sure they're good. Make sure when you go like this, they feel good. No grittiness, no lumpy feeling, no play. Just make sure they just feel good. It also doesn't hurt to look down in there where the ball actually rides and check. If you look at it in the light like I am right now, you can see dirt or any of the pitting that might be inside that race, because that's the load bearing surface on a bearing. So you want to make sure that's good. If there's any pitting, dirt, anything, get rid of it, get a new bearing. If this bearing goes inside of an engine, it could wipe out the engine. I probably wouldn't, but it very well could. So you want to make sure they're good when you put them in. Especially, that says Vietnam. So that's where the bearing was made. It is a cat bearing. I don't know if you can see that or not. Especially if they're made in mainland China. If they say PRC on them, always, always, always check them. But that is good. Now, basically you install them the way you took them off. However, since they came off so easily, I'm going to use a dab of this, which is bearing retainer compound. It's just enough See that discoloration there? I don't know if you can see it. If this bearing came off that easy cold, as it heats up, this will expand. So as the engine gets hotter, this tolerance fit gets looser. And I don't like that. So I've had enough spun ball bearings in my life to know that that's not a good thing. So, tiny little bit of this, you really don't need much. Then put the bearing on. Of course, make sure it doesn't have any oil on it. Now, alternatively, you could heat this or shrink this. If you put this in the freezer overnight and shrink it, or you put this in an oven, say 300 degrees, toaster oven or something, and heat them, they'll just slide right on. I'm not going to do that because I'm going to use the retaining compound. I don't want to burn it. And if you put this in the freezer with the compound, when you take it out of the freezer, it immediately gets condensation on it. So you see water, we're in a humid area, so you see water on it. It'll wreck the bond that compound has. So I'm just going to press it on the way it is right now. And to do that, all the way down. Have room for our snap ring. Just check it, make sure it's seated, which of course it is. And make sure, if you look in there, make sure it's all the way seated. Now as that cools, you can see the retaining compound coming out of there. As that cools, you want to make sure it stays in there because it is loose. And that retaining compound is anaerobic, so it won't cure outside of where the bearing contacts the housing. So we'll put our screws back in. Now, retaining compound is glue. The good thing about it is if you heat it up to about 300 or so degrees with a torch, the way I did just now, it'll break that and you can just push it out like Loctite. You have to heat Loctite to break it. Make sure we're clean. sure we're straight, which we're not. And give her a push. Check it. Make sure we're not hitting the shaft with the socket. No, we're good. Don't want to ruin the shaft. Okay, there you have it. That is one Caterpillar accessory drive rebuilt. I don't know if the dealers will rebuild them or not, or truck shops will rebuild them or not, but that is all there is to it. It's 2 bearings in about 30 minutes of your time. So I sat down to edit the video this morning, and I had it just about done. Thought it was all right. Then I realized I should probably check this before I install it in the engine, because of the way I was pushing the bearing in. I put a lot of load on this bearing, pushing down, so the center was pushing down from the shaft because I was pushing this way, and it was pushing on these races, on the outers. And I didn't really like the way that looked in the video. So before I installed this morning, I checked it, and sure enough, there was a notch in one of the bearings. So, knowing that I glued it together with bearing compound, I knew it was not going to be fun to get apart. And instead of just uploading the video and pretending that I did not screw up, I screwed up. So I decided to take it apart and fight with it, because the bearing compound actually works. So you saw in the earlier part of the video how easily the bearings came off of everything. Let me tell you, this is still hot, and this is still hot. I had to have one heck of a contraption rigged up to get this bearing off and out of this aluminum and then off of here. You can still see there's some white residue on there. That's the compound. So in order to be honest and upfront and not do you a disservice, I decided to pull it back apart and actually show you what I have to do to get this bearing off with the retainer compound. It definitely does its job. So I want to show you how much harder I have to work to get this thing apart. 14 hours maybe after I put it together, so it's not like it's been on there for a month and it had time to cure. This stuff takes 24 hours to cure, like really, really hard. It's only been about 14 hours, so I want to show you the other bearing because I had to work for it this time. Here we go. So this is the good old Harbor Freight bearing puller that I used. What I used yesterday was just this half. Well, now I have to have this half. So here's the bearing. Goes on here like this. Tighten these up. So it sits like so. Now this bolt I have in here, like I did yesterday, so that it pushes on the outside of the shaft, because you don't want to push directly on here. you mar that up. It's an expensive part. So the bolt is just for pushing purposes. Slide that on here. Make sure the bolt stays in the center. You could center punch the bolt to make a divot, but I don't think we'll need to. Now, you'll notice they're popped. So, I was gonna say, you'll notice it hasn't moved. This thing has not budged. Not even a little, it just popped just a little bit. So what I'm gonna do, liquid heat here. Now you have to heat the bearing up. Of course, you wouldn't do this to a good bearing, but I wasn't comfortable with the notch I felt in it. So I'm going to go to my local bearing supplier and get some new bearings. Hopefully they have US made. These bearings I got from Cat, I don't know that I like them from the get-go, but it's what I had. They were expensive. I think they were about almost 60 bucks a piece for these bearings. I'm betting you I can get them from my bearing house for about 20. So I'm gonna take these off, go down there, get new ones, and rebuild this again, and not screw it up this time. So here we go. There you have. All right, I got some new bearings. These are NTN brand, and they were, I don't know if you can see that, they were made in the US. Went down to my local bearing supply house and they got me these. I feel like maybe they're a better quality than the Cat ones. Either way, I won't screw these up. So, just by spinning them, just right out of the box, I can tell I like them better than anything else I've had. So this time I'm gonna put this bearing into the housing, and then I can back the bearing with a socket. I have a socket here, and I can push against the bearing itself instead of pushing against the housing. See how easy that goes in? That's why I put the compound on. So you want to make sure it fits over that part, around that part. So this sits on the bearing. Check it and make sure you're not messing anything up. I want to take socket and back this, so I want to put something here in there so that I'm pushing against this and this backed by that, so I don't move the bearing at all or inside itself. I'll take my socket, put it in place. We have a gap under here, so I'm only pushing against the socket. There you go. Just to put my plate on and I'm all set. Bolts get tightened. There is a torque spec. I'll torque them on the bench. I think it's about 10 or 12 foot-pounds, which I should be close. We'll put our snap ring in and we're done. My friendly neighborhood bearing shop actually had the right snap ring pliers, so I bought them. There you go. All right, well, there we have it. One rebuilt cat pump drive. Something that should not be overlooked during a rebuild because these bearings were bad. Thanks for watching.